If you haven't beaten this one already, I'm so sorry. Hopefully this helps. What's going on, guys? This is Arcadin, and welcome back to Abyss Floor 116, where we one-shot this, but I've heard it's been pretty frustrating for other people just based on just the potential of the RNG not rolling in your favor. I would say in general, it's a relatively controllable fight, but how can I say that? I beat it in one go. So, here's my team. And let's explain some of the mechanics, so in case you don't get it on your first try, you'll be able to at least understand why you're not winning. So the first person on the team, as with the last several videos, has been Adventurer Ras. Adventurer Ras is just amazing with his S2 being able to drag along highest DPSer as well as potentially defense break is just insane for this fight. For the most part in this fight, you don't want any AoE, so you're not going to be using the S3 all that much. But I think in phase 1 it's totally fine to do it there. S1 for him can be really useful with his ability to strip buffs from the enemy. But in this particular fight, it's not all that useful. So you're mostly just worried about using the burns on the S2, which is really good. Adventurer Ras, you'll note that we do have on Arius as per kind of usual, but I think you could probably get away with a Sword of Azera if you needed to, because he is going to be the enemy, or like target that's going to be up front. So the enemy is going to be attacking him the most. And then if you look at my stats, you're going to see that it's pretty well rounded for the character. Okay speed, health and defense are pretty high, and the fact that our effectiveness is in a range that if we are going to land those defense breaks on the S2, it will, and the fact that we have a decent amount of effect resist to hopefully resist some of the incoming debuffs just from anything just makes this Adventurer Ras a pretty good one for this team. Second, and also like last time, we are going to be using Kitty Clarissa. Same exact stats as before, nice and fast, decent effect resist, and enough bulk to, you know, take a hit if she has to take a hit. Once again, Warhorn, more attack is only going to be useful for your attacker and everybody else because they're all going to be doing a lot of S1s here. So having the attack from the Warhorn as well as the combat readiness push, super useful. Again, the EE for her, we are using the EE that gives health back on the S1 attack. So any extra healing is only going to come in handy here, especially when you're doing a lot of dual attacks and constantly cycling. You'll see why that matters here in just a little bit, but in general, more healing is always better. So Kitty Clarissa, great addition and does similar things to what Ras is going to be bringing to this team. Third on this team, we are going to have Tamarinne. Welcome back, Tam. You weren't able to do the last floor, but this floor you definitely can. Anytime that you can bring in this healer, she is just so strong in PvE in so many ways. But for this one in particular, you'll note we actually bring along a different artifact than sometimes we normally do. This time we have Mag's Tome. Mag's Tome for extra cycling is only going to allow her to hit more often, heal more often, transform more often, bring dual attacks more often, push your team more often, and give attack buff more often. So all of those things are super, super, super useful in PvE content and makes her like a very strong choice. You'll note on gear, I actually just took a lot of my gear. I think I took my maid's gear and put it on her just because my maid's usually a little bit thicker, so we made her a little thicker so she could take a little bit more of a hit. She's a little bit faster, but mostly around the same speed that she would normally be at. But the big thing is we do have some decent effect resist on her, just in case there are any debuffs that happen to want to try and straggle their way on. She's just going to ignore them, which is really, really useful in a lot of scenarios, and she's just a strong pick. You'll note that my effectiveness is not super high, mostly because in this particular fight we didn't really need as much of like the strips or anything to land on when you're doing like an S1 when she's transformed, and so not having that is not as big as it's not really that big of a deal for this particular fight. So Tamarinne, really strong healer, really great for those dual attacks, and really great just general combat readiness utility as well as healer for this team. The final unit for this particular team is going to be Taranor Guard. We've seen this team before. It's a lot of just cycling. It's a lot of allowing the Taranor Guard to push, as well as lots of defense breaks, as well as lots of damage and lots of dual attacks to constantly keep a lot of damage just immediately onto the boss. Because using AoE is just super bad. It's just bad for phase 2 in this fight. Taranor Guard makes a perfect appearance here, jumping right in. So Looking at his gear, you do have a symbol of unity for extra added damage for when he's doing attacks. You'll also note that once again, I find myself using this really scuffed rage set because we know we're going to be landing a lot of defense breaks to be able to do a little bit of extra damage. Note that your damage again does not have to be overly high with this kind of set. And if you really do have like a super cracked version of destruction or attack that has a similar version of this, you're basically just building a very slow Taranor Guard, lots of attack, high crit damage, and hopefully enough effectiveness to be able to make yourself like land those defense breaks more often. Honestly, I have probably not as high of effectiveness as I need. My guess is probably 85% would do better, but the reality is this. Taranor Guard is going to get so many attacks, so that even at 73%, yeah, I might miss a few more opportunities, but who cares? We're going to land it most of the time, and worst case scenario, we restart the fight, we try again. If you've ever played this team before, you know that you can take multiple attempts very, very quickly because the team just cycles so fast. So, that's the team. Now let's talk about the mechanics of the fight and why it might be frustrating to you even with such a strong team. Moving into phase 1 of the fight, you will note that the things you're going to be fighting against are 3 scheming Ropla and a sharp Tarask. The sharp Tarask is the actual boss and will change the phase if you actually kill him. Most of what your goal here is on this is to just go directly into the sharp Tarask with this team. You can use AoEs during this first phase. It's not going to like hurt you or kill you necessarily. And you also can kill all of the scheming Ropla if you really wanted to gain and build up souls. I don't think it's necessary, and I think more attempts on phase 2 is going to be better for you and probably better for your mental psyche than like taking a super long time in phase 1. So go hard in the paint for sharp Tarask. Basically use your Kitty Clarissa, S3, and then just S1 constantly into the sharp. Also do the same thing with any heals that you might need with Tamarinne. Feel free to just like keep cycling. Don't worry about like waiting for anything moving into phase 2. If you get a transformation, transform, just go ahead and like boost and attack as much as you possibly can. Same thing kind of happening there with Ras. Ras, you can feel free to use your S3 first so that you don't have to, so that you don't probably have any souls is my assumption by the time you get to his first turn, but by turn 2 you're able to constantly be cycling from then on out using a burnt S2 and just constantly cycling in that Taranor Guard. The more times that you're attacking, the more chances you're going to keep that defense break up, and this boss is kind of annoying and does move pretty fast, so you will have to try and keep landing that defense break over and over, which is why Taranor Guard is a great choice here. All in all, I think either direction, whether you take the slow route or the fast route, is totally fine for phase 1, but as we move into phase 2, this is where the RNG kind of picks up, and hopefully it goes well for you. So in phase 2 of this fight, apparently I got a little bit lucky. So let's just take a look real fast at what the Elena does and then what the other like mobs do as well too. So Elena has a couple of different passives. Number 1 is Guardian of the Stars. It unaffected by elemental disadvantage when an ally attacks. After being attacked, grants stackable increased attack and speed to all allies. When health is 40% or less after being attacked, activates Consecrated Ground before transforming Proud Wizard and Sympathetic Hermit Wizard into Cerise and Ray, and increases combat readiness of the transformed targets by 50%. Can only be activated once per turn. You'll note in this, when we do this, it doesn't happen until the 40%, so it's not a huge deal. And again, this particular strategy actually has you ignoring pretty much everything. You're ignoring everything except for Elena. The only other thing that you're going to be paying too much attention to will be the green crystal. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. Elena's other passive is when suffering an attack that targets all allies, decreases damage received by all allies by 50% and activates Consecrated Ground. Consecrated Ground can be activated once per turn. After attacking, deals additional damage to all enemies inflicted with a unique effect. Additional damage dealt increased proportion of the number of unique effects. Basically, that's a long way of saying don't AoE. Literally just do not AoE during this part of the fight. It's not going to do a lot of damage, and it's going to have a lot of retaliated damage, so don't worry about doing any of that kind of stuff. The other big things for Elena is like when she has the barrier put up, that actually converts to extra strength to all of her, to all of the enemies, like damage. So like it basically says converts barrier strength of all enemies into damage. So you want to get rid of those barriers as fast as you can. The other thing too is like on Starlight's Will, there is a decreased speed effect that she has a chance to drop on you. And then also on her Eternally Shining Comet, which attacks all enemies with a meteor shower, decreasing hit chance, and then increasing attack of the caster for 3 turns, grants invincibility to all allies except for the caster, and the green crystal for 1 turn, ignores effect resist. The basic idea of this team that we're going into is like you shouldn't have to deal with Eternally Shining Comet because we're going to kill her before she gets a chance to S3. That's the basic gist. If you had to deal with this, it would be kind of annoying because you'd have the permanent buff of decreased hit chance from that one, and then also from the Starlight's Will we were talking about before, you have that permanent decreased speed debuff that can be on there. So how do you deal with these constant debuffs that are coming up that are permanent on you? Well, the big answer and the best thing to do here, and the only other thing you'll hit other than the boss, is the green crystal. So the green crystal, upon receiving lethal damage, which is basically, I believe, 1 hit, recovers the caster to max health and activates outflowing energy. So when the outflowing energy happens, so after you've hit it once, it'll dispel all the unique effects from all enemies whose unique effects are the same as the caster. So you'll note that the green crystal also gets every single time a non-attack skill is used, which is how this works, by the way, because the non-attack skills that you use will make Jewel Light happen on this green crystal, and it will actually change the debuff that is up on it. And so that's how you kind of like cycle through them until it gets to the one that you have on your characters and that it has on the crystal. And when that happens, if any one of your characters attacks that crystal, it will change to the next thing on the crystal, like it'll change to the next debuff, but it will also get rid of that debuff on all of your characters. So that's how you deal with having too many random debuffs on there. But the weird thing about this particular team is I've noticed that as long as you're cycling everything into Elena and you're just getting as many dual attacks in as you can, for the most part, Ras is going to always be dragging Taranor Guard, and every time he does that and you're burning it, it's granting an immunity to him and it's granting an immunity to the Ras. Also, every time that Kitty Clarissa uses her S3, she's giving herself immunity as well too. So the only person that should truly be super affected by this problem is Tamarinne, and she has pretty decent effect resist anyways. Not that the effect resist is going to be super like amazing here, but again, you don't even have to really deal with this mechanic all that much if you're lucky and you actually get those immunities up first. You're just not going to be dealing with it. So focus all of your damage in, try to kill the Elena before she actually gets to her S3, and if you have to get rid of a debuff, make sure that you use like some kind of non-attack skill with probably Tamarinne and or the S3 from your Kitty Clarissa, but something that's going to make sure it cycles enough that you're able to hit the crystal, get rid of that debuff on you, and then go right back to hitting Elena. That's the fight. There's not really too much extra to it. The other ones just ignore the other, like the Hermit Wizard and the other wizard, that just ignore them completely. Literally just spend all of your time on Elena, and if it doesn't work before the 4th turn, restart. And this is why I say, if you're taking this fight, try to go directly into the Tarask first in phase 1, because that way, if you don't happen to get the proper luck or RNG you're looking for in phase 2, restart, and you didn't waste all that much time. Floor 1 to 16, completely done, guys. Congratulations. Welcome to the end. I had heard, especially after we were done with this, I feel kind of bad because, like, I love Genizod. Poor Genizod had, like, hours spent on this floor, and I just happened to luck sack it and won. I really hope for your guys' sake that you guys end up being as either lucky or have as good of an understanding of the fight, essentially, that you're able to just get it done quickly. Hoping for the best for you guys, really am. If you guys are new to Level Up Together, welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you love this content, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you guys chat in the, below in the video. It's actually super, super helpful for the algorithm to be able to push us forward, as well as to give people an opportunity to see like a video that can potentially help them out to get them through to the end of the abysses as well. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We love you. We will see you guys in the next one. Peace out, y'all.